Erev Tov Rabbatai. Let's continue with Pirkeh Avot, Perek Shishi. As we said, right, the good qualities that the Torah inculcates into us. We're continuing with those good qualities. So it says the Pirkeh Avot over here, person who has the Torah, acquires the Torah, also there's another ma'ala that he has, which is that Beneheni mimenu etzah betushya. So what does this mean? That people, now that he became big Tamid Chacham, he knows a lot of things, he has a lot of wisdom. So what happens is that people come now to him to get advice, to take advice and to know how to plan out things, to map things out. People come to him because they know that he has the wisdom of the Torah, so they come to take advice from him. This is what it is, So this is something very important because, the big Chachamim, all the people come to them, to the big people. The Chashuva people, the leaders come to them to hear the dot of the Torah. I'll tell you some interesting examples of this, If you remember, a long time ago, right? I don't know if you were around in those days in America, but when Reagan was president, you remember Reagan? I was a child at that time. I was in grade school over here in Queens, I remember he had a question, some kind of religious question. Reagan, Reagan was a smart guy, not a stupid guy. So who did he go to, for the question? Did he go to the priests, the Pope? No, he didn't go to the Pope. He didn't go. Who did he go to? He went to Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. Where did he live in Manhattan? He went to him to ask him the question. Because he knew that Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, he knew he was the biggest chacham of America. They used to call him the Rabbi of America. That's what he was. So he went to him to ask him a question about religion. About halakha. The Jewish law, whatever. Whatever you want to call it, right? He went to him. He knew where to go. That's the thing. That's what we're talking about over here. Same thing, Alav Shalom, with Maran. I remember, they used to come to him, all the big, politicians in Israel, to get advice from him. Right, the story in the 70s, right? They did with the operation of Entebbe, famous, right? Operation, right? Everybody knows about that. Netanyahu's brother over there, Yoni, he died over there, in that operation. The whole story there, right? So, before they went to Entebbe, you know who they went to, right? Rabin was the Rosh Mimshala at that time, Rabin. So who did he go to? Maran. He went to Maran, Ovadia also. And he asked him, he says, are we allowed to do an operation like this, to go to Entebbe and to save these Jews over there? So Maran told them, yes, you can go. That's why they went. Because he told them this, Afterwards, once this operation, was over, then Maran, in Yebi Omer, in his book, Yebi Omer, he wrote a tshuva about this whole story, how Rabin came to him to ask him the question, and how he answered him, and why he allowed them to go, to this operation, because it was dangerous, There was a lot of danger involved there.
It was also Shabbat, no?
Huh? I don't remember. I was a little kid at that time, I was like your son, eating lollipops. I was too young, I don't remember. But anyway, right, the point is that that's the way it was, They went to Maran. Later on also, I can tell you, all the big politicians in Israel, used to come to Maran when they had a question about something, some operation to do this, to do that, all kinds of things. Give you an example, right? Bibi, right? He's still around, right? He's still the leader over there. I remember when Obama was the president, Bibi was already thinking at that time to bomb Iran. He was already thinking that this was 15 years ago. You understand? So what happened was, he wasn't sure though, So he went to Obama. I'll tell you the story, You may know. He went to Obama and he said, listen, I want to go bomb over there.
Who goes to Obama?
Bibi. He went to Obama, he told him, he says, I want to go, So Obama told him like this. He says, I'm not going to help you. I'm not coming with you. He told him, if you want to go, you can go by yourself. That's what he told him. You understand? But he says, if you get into trouble, don't come to me, to bail you out. I'm not going to help you. You're on your own, he told him. That's what he told him. Obama, he wasn't supportive, He wasn't a big fan of Israel, He wasn't a little bit anti-Semitic, right?
Muslim.
whatever you want to call it, right? Anyway, the point is, the point is that what happened was that after he went to Obama, right, to ask him, this question, then he went to Maran. He came to Maran, and he asked Maran. He says, listen, he says, this is the situation. I want to go, bomb Iran. And he says, but I'm not sure what to do. He says, maybe you can help me, give me an answer. I'm not sure what the right thing is to do. There are some dangers involved, There are some issues. So what he told him was, that Obama doesn't really support this, as we said, right? He told him, you can go if you want, but I'm not going to help you, I'm not with you. Don't come to me, and don't mention my name. That's what he told him. So, when he told this to Maran, that Obama wasn't supporting him, Maran told him, don't do it. He says, wait, don't do it now. This is not the time. He told him, to lay off, and that's what he did. He stopped. This is exactly what happened over there, They say, by the way, there's a story about this, that he came to see the rabbi, it was late night, like after 12 o'clock, after midnight. Why he came so late? First of all, the rabbi was up, he was still learning at that time, he was learning until 3 a.m. Learning Torah, He was up, he wasn't going to sleep early. So, he came late, why? Because it's more safe, for the Prime Minister, Rosh HaMemshala, it's safe to go at night, there's not a lot of people in the street, it's more quiet, more peaceful at night. That's why he went there, so he came there like it was after midnight. And so he went in, to the room where Maran was learning there, Torah. He was learning Torah there. So his assistant, right, Elisha, who was at that time, he was running the politics in Shas. So he took Bibi inside there, into the room. So Maran, when he saw, when they came in, Maran didn't notice that they came in, he was so busy in learning, he didn't notice that he came. He didn't even look at him, he was like still reading the book, reading the Torah. He was reading. So, Bibi is like standing there, like this, waiting for Maran, So Elisha tells him, he says, should I tell him to stop learning, to speak with you? So Bibi, listen to what Bibi told him. He told him, Bibi, he said, no, he says, let him finish first. He says, I don't want to bother him, he's learning Torah. Like this. I don't want to bother him. See, this is a real Jew, a person who has this kind of an attitude, a little bit anava, right, humility. He told him, he says, let him finish, So what happened was, he kept on reading Maran for like 15 minutes, And then he looked up, and he saw him. So he said, oh, come in, tells him, come in. That's what happened, that's how he went in there. I'll tell you another story, Also, you remember this guy, Rosh HaMemshala, Barak. Remember this guy? Barak. He's not a good guy, this guy. Bad guy, bad boy. But he also went to Maran, He used to call him. One time he called Maran, on the phone. And he wanted to ask him a question, So, listen to this, right? Maran knew his character already. Who he was, this guy. So, listen to this. True story, right? So he gets on the phone, right? And Barak, starts to ask him a question, So Maran answers him. He says, this is what I think, like this and this and that. So then, right after this, once he got the answer, he started to brag about himself, Barak, he was a big shot, bragging, you know what I did, things I did. Let me tell you what things that I did. So he starts bragging to Maran, Maran doesn't like this, people bragging, he's wasting my time, I'm learning Torah, Don't waste my time with your bragging. I don't want to hear your bragging. I'm not interested. So you know what he did, right, Maran? Listen to this, right? So he starts bragging, Barak, on the phone, right? So what does he do, Maran? He puts the phone down on the bed, and he keeps on learning, He just can ignore him, That's what he puts the phone down. Weiter, let's go learn, let's learn more. He didn't want to listen to him anymore. You called me to ask a question, okay, but it'll stop bragging, I don't want to hear your bragging. I'm not interested. Well, who are you to brag in front of me? That's the way it was, Same thing with Sharon, remember Sharon? He used to also come to Maran. All the big shots, Mofaz, you remember this guy? Mofaz, a Persian guy. Mofaz was the defense minister, Ramat Kal. Tough guy, Persian guy. He also used to come to Maran. When he used to come to Maran used to give us smacks, he used to smack everybody, He used to give him, like this, Didn't care who it was. He wasn't scared of nobody. That's what he was. That's what it is, Rabotai. So you see from there, right, as I told you, that when a person becomes gadol in Torah, everybody wants to come and hear his advice. That's what we're talking about over here. So that's what happens. When a person becomes a real chacham, everybody wants to come and ask him questions. What about this, Rabbi? What do you say about this? They don't know what to do. They're not sure. As the Rabbi said, right? Aseh lecha rav, istalek min hasafek, right? What does that mean? Make yourself a rabbi, and get out of the doubt. Bapros. Don't have a bapros. Have a rabbi so you can solve your bapros. If you have a vapros, don't just continue like that. You have to ask a rabbi, and get a solution. That's the whole thing, right? Okay, you get the idea. Okay, we'll do one more and we'll stop. It also says, right, Bina Gvura, another thing, right, which is also, they come to him not only for advice, but also to understand things, They have questions, philosophical questions. They come to ask the rabbi, what do you think about this? Is this true? Is this, they ask questions, which are deep questions, philosophical things, So a person, who has wisdom of the Torah, he can answer questions like this, He knows how to cut through all the nonsense, get to the truth, get to the emet, get to the bottom line. He knows how to get there. So people, have questions, all kinds of things, they want to go to a rabbi and solve the problem. Theoretical questions, also, right? This kind of thing. And gvura, what is gvura? Right? Might, So what does that mean? Sometimes, you need a chacham to tell you, what is the mighty thing to do? Strong, to be strong, The chacham will tell you how to be strong and solve your problem, to overcome your problem. That's also, something that a chacham does. Okay, you get the idea. All right? One more and we'll stop. Here it goes, right? So it says, V'notenet lo malchut u'memshala. Listen to this, right? So it says the Pirkeh Avot, when you learn Torah, you become a chacham, also gives you, right, malchut and memshala. What does that mean? You become like a king, like a melech. You become like a president. Why is that? Because when you have the chokhmah of the Torah, you can rule over everybody. You're the boss. You become the boss. Because you know what to do. They don't know what to do. You're the only one who knows what to do. So you're the boss. That's the thing, When a person has chokhmah, everybody wants to make him the leader, They say, oh, you're the chacham, you lead us, That's what they say, They don't want some, the dumb guy, right, to lead, somebody who doesn't know what he's doing. They want the biggest chacham to lead. That's what they do, That's what they say about Avraham Avinu, right? That Avraham Avinu, he was a ger, he was a convert. He converted to Judaism. He wasn't born a Jew, he wasn't, he was just a regular person. His father was a rasha, Oved Avodah Zarah, a regular person, nothing special. But what happened was, because he acquired the chokhmah of the Torah, became a tzaddik, and he converted to Judaism, all these things, So what happened was, in the end, even though he wasn't really, a politician, Avraham Avinu was not a politician. But what they did was they gathered, all the people in the world, and they brought him, Avraham Avinu, and they told him, he says, we want you to be our melech, we want you to be the king, So they made him the leader of the whole world, Avraham Avinu. That's what they did, they elected him. They told him, we want you to be the leader, you tell us what to do, you guide us. That's the way it is, when a person has the wisdom of the chokhmah, of the Torah, everybody wants to make him the president, the leader, the king, because he knows what to do, he has the chokhmah. That's why everybody trusts him, that's the thing. Baruch Adonai, אמן ואמן. יהי לכם אומר, אז הקדוש ברוך הוא זוכות ישראל, ואפילו חלפי ובא להם תורה ומצוות, שנאמר אדוני חפץ, למען צדקו יגדיר תורה בידי.